I don't book anything. Like we're going on a flight tomorrow. We're actually flying separately because I have calls until late. And I don't even know what hotel we're staying at. And I love not asking. So I don't even know where the fuck we're staying or whether he's even booked the hotel yet. Love that. But I trust him to do it, right? And that can feel hard at the beginning, but he's proven me time and time again that he would never not have it organized and that I'll always have a bougie bed to sleep on. So I'm good. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I hope that you're having such a lovely, nourishing, delicious, juicy week. In today's episode, I'm really excited to do this. I haven't been doing this very much lately, and I need to do these more because I do really, really great interviews. Sorry, not to toot my own horn, but I do really awesome interviews, very juicy. I love doing interviews on other people's podcasts. I just think it's really fun to be like asked specific, random, juicy, deep questions and just to be able to like riff on all these different things with amazing other people. And so I'm going to make sure that I start sharing a few more of them on my podcast, because then you guys can also hear them as well. And it's kind of nice, just like a different perspective rather than me talking to you and just like education. I'm kind of more sitting in a little bit more of that receiver seat and being able to just flow with kind of what's being fed to me, if you will. So anyway, this podcast was from the episode There She Glows with Becca Nichols. And in today's episode, we kind of went on the whole like expedition of different things. We really started off with what it means to actually get your man to lead you. We talked about being empoweredly submissive and what that means and how I kind of developed that and the importance of that, why it's important to be in the energy of receiving and mastering that, not just for relationships, but also for money and business and manifestation and all that kind of stuff. We talked about nervous system work. We talked about trauma healing and like what it really is to do somatic healing and what trauma means to me and how I've really seen trauma play out in more of like a modern way with the kind of women and men that I work with. And then we also talked about more towards the end dealing with copycats, as that's something that I've dealt with a lot. So I talk about that. I talk about feminine leadership, and then also just what has really helped me to step into more confidence and magnetism when it comes to being a leader and a woman and a business owner. So that is the episode for today. We're going to dive on in. I hope that you guys absolutely love it, and I'll see you on the other side.
One thing about Monica is that she is always on her real game. You are so consistent on social media and you provide so much value. And you've had multiple reels take off. And some of the reels that get a lot of traction for you are the ones where you're educating women on how to get their man to lead them. So what does it mean to have or to allow a man to lead us as a woman in a relationship?
Oh, what a good question. Okay, so yes, it's those kinds of reels, and my fiance loves it because he's like, yes, I'm in it. But then like my most viral reel, he's not. So we all just love that of like, well, you didn't make the cut for this one. I mean, it proves the point, even though there's like the hardcore feminists out there and the Miss Independents that are like, this is bullshit, and they'll write the comments. Oh my God, I got a comment the other day saying she's suffering from Stockholm syndrome. I'm like, okay. Like I was like, this is a winning comment. Anyway, even though you get those comments and people think of these sorts of things, the fact that consistently these topics go viral and it just proves that women are craving this, and men are also like, we forget that men are part of the conversation, that they are craving to also feel safe to be able to lead us and to step up and whatnot. So what it really means to let a man lead. So firstly, I want to debunk the idea that letting a man lead means that like you don't get a say, that you just have to do whatever he wants, that you become some kind of submissive doormat. I have this phrase that I love to use of empoweredly submissive. And basically what this means, and like it's obviously not a word, empoweredly, but what this means is that you are choosing to be empowered in your submission, because a woman that really can actually let go and receive and let her man lead is a woman that has such a deep rooted sense of confidence that she knows that even if he stepped over the line, she would say no. Like she has such a deep sense of safety that when she is allowing him to lead, it's not coming from this kind of place of, I don't get a say, and now I'm just having to be along for the ride. It's actually very much the opposite. Like the key word is letting. She's letting him lead. Like she's giving him that gift, and she's also gifting herself the ability to just let go. And really only that can be done when she is very rooted in internal safety. So that's why I'll often then couple this conversation with, if there is a disconnect with your body, if there is, past trauma, if there's disassociation, if there is a a lack of self-trust, if there is people-pleasing tendencies, a lack of internal boundaries and external boundaries, then you will never feel safe to fully let him lead and be in control because well, you don't trust him, but you also don't trust yourself that if something was to go wrong, that you would be okay. And I mean, also in this is like abandonment wounds and fear of getting let down and heartbreak and mistrust and like all those sorts of things, but also women just lacking the discernment to be able to know when they actually can trust a man and when there are signals that they shouldn't be trusting this man. And it's not just a man thing, like women also are bitches. Women are also untrustworthy. Women can also be really nasty humans. So it's not just a man thing, but overall, women are craving this. We need to listen. And part of our job as women, especially modern day women, is letting him actually lead and remembering that they also want safety in their relationship. It's not just us that want safety. So we also need to cultivate an environment where it feels safe to let him lead us and he's not going to get his balls chopped off.
I love that perspective. One of the things that I really admire about you and that we have in common is that you are so unapologetic in your expression and you're not afraid to say things that might be seen as hot takes or controversial if it's something that you truly stand behind. And so, if the concept of a man leading is a concept that our listeners are learning about for the first time today, and they're curious about what it would look like to actually allow their man to lead, I would love to hear what are some of the ways in your relationship, Monica, that you allow your fiance to lead you. And side note, I also just love that he's in all of your reels. Does he eat that up?
No, he actually hates it. So what's really funny is my assistant, she puts the audio behind the reels, and I didn't realize this until the other day, and she told me, and it just like had never clicked. She's like, I hear all the like audios before I put the audio. So she obviously hears what he's saying, and the whole time he's like, I fucking hate this. Like, fuck you. Why are you making me do this? Like it is like one day I need to get a really good one where like you can actually hear it all and put that up. And I'm like, this is the real audio. So like, don't think that if your man is not wanting to get in videos and in reels, that he's not a good man, because I have to beg this man sometimes to like, we're going to Paris tomorrow, and I had to like send him a message. I'm like, would it be okay if we scheduled in like a little bit of time? Like, this is the vision, like, please. He's like, yes, okay, fine. But let me tell you, I get 20 seconds. And he's like, you have 20 seconds now or never. And I'm like, oh, it's so stressful. So anyway, firstly, just painting the picture of that. I wanted to jump in though and also say, not to like go down the path of feminism before I get into this, get into your question. But I also want to let women know that this kind of like radical feminism where it's gone too far is also hurting women. It's not just hurting men, it's also hurting women because we are fed this lie of the more that you're working, the more money that you make, the more independent that you are, the less you rely on a man, the more that you're kind of being this superwoman, the more you are like you are then better. You are, you kind of get that tick of approval. And so we get fed this lie that if we are doing what is, very feminist of us, then we are enough. And then we are making sure that we're like making our great grandmothers proud. But what about all the women that don't want to hustle their asses off and that actually would like to provide for a family in terms of doing the things at home and make a beautiful home and bake, and that's what makes her really happy? What she's now all of a sudden like not getting society's tick of approval and not a good enough woman, but also just it I for the last like 7, 8 years, just the biggest thing that I notice is the shame that women will initially feel of wanting their man to lead. Like, and that was something that I struggled with in the beginning. If I had such a deep craving to let a man lead, but it felt so wrong to even have that thought in my head. Like, it was such a shameful thing that I ever even like considered wanting. And so many women feel that way because they feel that if they let him lead, they then are like not powerful or have no control or, are going against kind of like women sticking together and like fuck men and all that kind of stuff. So it's also really detrimental to us and to our happiness and to our health and our hormones and just our vitality and our fertility and like all those things that we're now seeing come up in terms of the physical manifestations of all this shit. And obviously it's really unhelpful to men as well. But it's actually also been really fucking good for men, which is the hilarious part of it because it's trying to be all like, empower women, blah, blah, blah. And of course, it's done so much goodness for women, but there's also many things that you could look at and realize, well, maybe it's done a lot of good for men. For example, a man these days doesn't have, if he gets a woman pregnant, he doesn't have to provide and protect anymore because we are living in a feminist society. She's an independent woman. She can go do it herself. You know what I mean? Whereas back in the day, a man wouldn't even sleep with a woman or start dating a woman if there wasn't the purpose of marriage. And not to go into like, you have to get married. Like, I'm not saying any of that. We live in a modern world, but understanding that feminism has also meant that people can be irresponsible and then not pay for those reckless choices. I don't know. I feel like people these days just kind of forget that law and order is actually a really good thing. And if we don't have any kind of norms and any kind of like masculine container in society, that is derailing to us and confusing to us. So anyway, not to go down that path. So okay, so a couple of things in the way that he provides for me. So let me give some examples, especially because I make the money. So this kind of adds an extra layer to it, in that I'm the breadwinner. So number one is he books everything. I don't book anything. Like we're going on a flight tomorrow. We're actually flying separately because I have calls until late, and I don't even know what hotel we're staying at. And I love not asking. Like sometimes I'll ask if I want to like prep for content or like that kind of stuff, and my team will pull some like ideas and everything. But I don't need to get any content whilst we're there. So I'll just allow myself to just go with the flow. So I don't even know where the fuck we're staying or whether he's even booked the hotel yet. Love that. Um, but I trust him to do it, right? And that can feel hard at the beginning, but he's proven me time and time again that he would never not have it organized and that I'll always have a bougie bed to sleep on. So I'm good. So that's one. Another one is, so I'm the cook. He does not cook. I love to cook, but he does all of like the man things around the house. And he actually also does like some of the lady things. He's better at laundry than me, but like I've never taken out the trash unless I actually had to take out the trash because like he broke his foot and he couldn't take the trash out. And we have like a steep driveway, then I'll take the trash out. So that's an example. Another thing is I've actually maybe once in not my life, but like in our relationship, filled up my car with gas. He will always fill it up. And as a result, sometimes he gets in and he's like, there is no gas in the car. We can't drive anywhere because I just like don't even look at the thing on the like whatever it's called. See, I don't even know what it is. So I never fill up the car with gas. And so it's these little things that you have the opportunity with in your relationship. I think a lot of the time people feel like it has to just be these big things, but we have to remember that the little things add up to being the big things. So even though I make the money, even though I love my job, and I would say that if one of us had to choose like who would work more, it'd probably be me just because I love working. I'm a generator in a human design, he's a reflector, so very different personalities. And so even though there's all of that at play and I'm super fiery and like super confident and say whatever the fuck I want to say, no problem drawing boundaries. I'm an Enneagram 8 if anyone knows Enneagrams. So even though I'm all of those things that people would typically paint and I used to paint as masculine, a fiery woman is a masculine woman, or if you aren't a people pleaser, you're a masculine woman. It's all like bullshit, right? Because the masculine and feminine is about the energy in which you show up in a situation. So he's always showing up as the leader, as the provider, as the protector, whereas I'm not showing up as that. I'm showing up as the nurturer, as the, in surrender, receivership, in my creative energy, blah, blah, blah. And so as a result of all these little things that we play with where he can take the lead, it's all those little things that add up to me feeling like he's the man in the relationship. Something as simple as he asks for the check, he signs for the bill. Even in the beginning of our relationship, if we went and stayed at a fancy hotel because I wanted to and like I was footing the bill, he had my credit card and he would go and like sign for the bill and make sure that we weren't overcharged and make sure they had everything correct on the reservation and like those sorts of things. But that also requires that level of trust where you allow him to do that, especially if you are the one making the money. There is an added layer of kind of work that you need to do around trust, but the trust comes from your internal discernment and your internal boundaries, right? So like he knows that if he ever crossed a boundary, like he'd be paying for it. And not like physical and money, like, in whatever the repercussions were, because he knows that I would follow through on my boundaries and he's seen me follow through. A lot of people, they make that mistake of like they have the boundary in their head, but when push comes to shove, they don't actually follow through with it. And so of course you then teach your partner that you're not serious about your boundaries and your self-respect. So of course your partner then continues to break your trust because you allow it to happen. Like we often I keep saying we often forget, but like here's another thing. We often forget in relationships that like the other person is a product of what we are doing. Like it's 50-50. So the other person could be being, manipulative and mean one day and whatnot. But how are you allowing that, playing into that? How have you kind of cultivated that? Maybe you have actually caused a situation or nitpicked something that didn't need to be nitpicked. And so, yeah, he's exploded and he's gotten really pissed and stormed off and whatnot. But is that his fault or is it also partially your fault? Not to say that you're then the problem, but we often don't want to take a mirror and go, okay, where am I also causing these issues? But it feels so good when you can take up that mirror and go, you know what? I'm actually behaving in such a regulated, grounded, calm, et cetera way. So I know in my heart of hearts that I'm not exacerbating or causing or creating these problems. And then not going down that path necessarily, but like, and then it's like, okay, well, then how can you support him to then heal, change, rise, etc., so that these situations don't keep reoccurring? For those of you that want to spice up your love life, if you have not listened or watched, you could listen or you could watch it, to my free masterclass on how to have him lead you. You are missing out and you want to grab that right now. This masterclass is basically guiding you on how to step out of that mothering and fully embrace being his lover. It's 1 hour with me and it's really going to help you to figure out why he's not leading. And then what you can do to support him in stepping into his masculine leadership and claiming you and being that protector that you're really craving him to be. So you can register at the link below in the podcast notes. And this is for you if you are dating or in a relationship and you're wanting to feel wanted by him. You do not want to be nagging him anymore. You want to feel protected and provided for. You want to feel that soul nourishing juiciness that comes from a man that is just claiming you, leading you, and having all of that masculine energy. Like if you want to be told, I'm picking you up at 8 p.m. or this is what we're doing, or like get into bed right now, I need to ravish you or take your clothes off. This program, sorry, not this program, this masterclass is absolutely what you need. And what I'm going to break down for you guys in the masterclass is the difference between men and women and the differences that we need to pay attention to. I'm also going to walk you through the 4 possible causes as to why he's not leading you. And then of course, what you need to do. I'm going to go through the difference between the lover and the mother archetypes. I'm going to walk you through what the feminine actually wants and how to get her needs met, your needs met, if you're a woman listening to this, and then the 3 steps to get him to lead you for good. So if you want the masterclass, click the link below and you can register for free. Let me know your thoughts on it. I've been really, really enjoying doing these masterclasses for you guys. It's a little bit of like a different way to deliver some of this juicy content and having that visual aspect as well. And like a vibey backdrop. You guys know I'm like a sucker for a vibe. So yeah, link is below and let's jump back into the episode.
What's so interesting about it is that it's really easy for us to say that we want our man to lead, especially if you are someone who watches romantic comedies or reads romantic novels. We really gush over the man taking charge and booking the reservation and picking us up for dates and executing and defending our honor and treating us like a princess. But in real time, so many women don't allow themselves to experience or receive that. So, from your perspective, why does mastering the art of receiving have such a flow on effect in other areas of our life?
A lot of women struggle to receive, right? So when you master that art of receiving, firstly, you're breaking I don't always like being like generational trauma because I feel like people don't actually understand how easy that is to break. They kind of attach themselves to it as like, oh, I'm a victim of it. So but it's true in that when you as a woman today learn to actually feel safe and deserving of receiving in, let's say, your relationship to begin with, you're breaking this whole idea that's really stemmed a lot from feminism and like the hard work and I've got to earn my way and like women aren't worth anything and it's so multi-layered, right? But you break that immediately by you feeling like, oh, my nervous system actually feels regulated and safe to just receive this, whether it's receiving a compliment. Sometimes my fiance will say, I love you, and I don't say it back because I just like to receive it. Right. And like he loves that. I had to kind of initially tell him what I was doing because he'd be like, I love you. And I'm just sitting there in silence. And then I'm like, oh, I'm receiving it, baby. He's like, okay, yes, receive it. So that receivership creates then it starts to rewire your nervous system to then realize, oh, I feel safe to have. And a lot of women don't feel safe to have. And it kind of comes back to that whole, it's easier to do it myself. I can't rely on anybody else. Everybody lets me down. And I want to say on that really quickly, something that I have had to learn being such a kind of bold personality and a very particular, like A type personality is the ability to have patience with other personalities. Just because somebody is like not going as fast as you or not doing something the same as you doesn't mean that your way is right and their way is wrong. Like really realizing that two truths can exist at the same, like can coexist at the same time, and one isn't better than the other. And so when you finally allow your nervous system to actually feel safe to receive and your body to feel safe to receive, of course, that then filters into every other area of your life because every area of our life is interconnected, but also our relationships and our feminine energy and our sexual energy. That really sits in our sacral chakra. And a lot of what also sits in regards to trauma in our sacral chakra, in our womb, in our stomach, in our lower back, that whole area is unsafety, is purely feeling unsafe in our body. It might be that you don't feel like you can trust your body. It may be that you've had abuse in the past where your body has suffered trauma. And so you've completely numbed out and disassociated from your body so you can't feel your body. It may be that you have self abandoned for so many years. And as a result, you just have so much self shame and rage towards yourself that you've kind of disconnected from your body and you don't trust yourself. But what also sits in this area isn't just relationships and sexual energy and safety, but it's also money. It's success. It's really that having energy. And you know, kind of bring it back into the feminism component. So many women do not feel deserving to just have without working for it. It feels like if I work for it and prove that I did this myself, then I will allow myself to just sit and hold it. But if my husband does it, like makes the money and I've gotten this handbag as a result, you don't feel deserving of it because it feels like you haven't earned it. And it's this whole kind of repatterning of realizing that like you as a woman don't have to go out and physically earn the money to then buy the handbag that you want. Let's just say, for example, the way that you're providing could be that you're providing a home for him. You're providing dinner every night. And without his nourishment and him having a beautiful home to come to, he wouldn't be able to go and make the money. And it's interesting when you have these conversations with men, because like good men over and over and over again will say, I would not be able to earn the money or do the job or have the career that I have without the woman that I have in my life. Because she does my laundry. She gets me up out of bed in the morning. She, gives me a warm home to come home to. She makes my food. And they are so grateful for those things because it's just that like simple of we always have what's like, the grass is greener on the other side kind of thing. They are so grateful for those things, but we devalue them. And we devalue them because a lot of this modern feminism, girl boss, whatever you want to call it, has devalued that. Right? It is more valuable to be a working woman making money and, oh my God, you did that yourself. And it's less valuable to be folding the laundry at home and looking after your children, which is completely incorrect in my opinion. I would say it's 100% more valuable or just as valuable to be at home raising children. And actually, I was talking to a friend about this last night. So, like in the US, obviously, the cost of daycare and all that kind of stuff is just fucking astronomical. Even just giving birth, like it's just so expensive. And being Australian and whatnot, it's just like so fucking ludicrous. I'm also a British citizen, so I'm aware of how it is there. And it's just like so much more reasonable. Anyway, so we were talking about it and, just the fact, the sheer fact that for a couple, if they're both working, it costs about 100 to 100 grand to hire a nanny, do daycare, a house cleaner, like all those other things that are literally needed to have a functioning family if both parents are working. Now, that doesn't mean that the woman has to be the one not working, but what so many people are starting to realize, and it's obviously really hard for a lot of families because things are so expensive these days. So many parents, they have to both work. But what a lot of people are realizing, and what's just like an important perspective shift, even if you don't act on this, just understanding this, even for me, was a perspective shift of a stay at home mum. Literally, what she does costs about 100 to 150 grand a year, depending where you're living. So if you want to add a money value, like a cash value, a number, a numerical value to what she's doing, she makes 150K a year, let's just say. So even that, it's just for so many of us, it's revaluing doing those things that a woman wants to do, and that it's okay if you have those cravings to like cook and just bake. And over my Christmas break, you might have been aware of this. I had my housewife era, or whatever I call it, whatever I call it. I loved it. Right now, I still worked here and there, but I basically, for anyone that doesn't know, I always take 6 weeks off at the end of the year. I go skiing, I do my thing, whatever. It's my birthday, Christmas. I'm a Christmas whore, so I just love it. So I took my 6 weeks off, and it was just my housewife vibe. And, I had like fucking hair rollers in. Like I was just like full embracing this housewife vibe. And it was just, I loved it. I was doing laundry. I was making the bed every day. And it's not to say that I want to necessarily do that every day, because I'd probably get really bored, because I love my job. But what it more was is it really allowed me to value also just, wow, this is actually really fucking peaceful. Like this whole idea of like, you are more valued as a woman if you're working. I'm like, wait, this is kind of a fucking vibe. I just read, I bake, I'm like so relaxed with my hair curlers in as I'm like making the bed. I'm like, this is a fucking vibe. Whoever made women think that we have to work, like shame on you, because this shit is the shit. So anyway, just, and maybe that's something even for some of you to play with as a starting role to just tap back into your feminine, is on the weekends, can you embrace this housewife vibe? And can you just allow yourself to just be a fucking housewife, put an apron on, put some colors in your hair, like make it a character, literally make it like like an 80s housewife or whatever character. Can you have fun with it? And can you notice whether it feels really nourishing in your body? And it's not to say that you then have to go be a housewife, but it's okay. Could I incorporate a little bit more of just what feels good in my body into my day, rather than doing all of this external shit that isn't actually nourishing you internally?
I absolutely love everything you said. And I think it's so interesting because this girl boss movement has really been glorified and shoved down our throats over the past couple of years. And I think it makes women who desire to stay home and immerse themselves in motherhood feel wrong or feel shame. So I think if nothing else, this conversation really provides us with an opportunity to shift our perspective. And I know with the work that you do, Monica, you do a lot of deep work, somatic work, the nervous system, and the facts are right now, we are in the middle of a global health crisis when it comes to women. 80% of women have hormonal imbalances, PCOS, endometriosis, infertility. These problems are at an all-time high. And unfortunately, many people are still very close-minded to the fact that a program, let's use yours as an example, Queen Alchemy, could heal those issues. I understand the value that healing somatically, healing our trauma, healing the nervous system has. But for those who are more likely to outsource their power and just expect their doctor or medication to solve all of these problems, can you explain from your perspective why somatic work and nervous system regulation and trauma healing is actually so impactful in the midst of this health crisis?
I love that you touched on this. I get so many women that come to me struggling to fall pregnant is like a main one, or they've had endometriosis for years and like they're still struggling with it, or PCOS or whatever it is. And I like to say that there's multiple things that you need to be doing for your health, and you actually want to be doing them kind of all at once simultaneously. You can start with one and then nail that so you don't get overwhelmed, because especially if you're new to this, trying to do 10 things for your health at once, it's just not sustainable. But this idea, even just the fact that you have to go, and it's a little bit different in Australia actually, even just the fact that you have to go to like this person for this thing, this person for this thing, that like women here, it's like they have to go to an OBGYN for this, then a normal GP for this, then an endocrinologist for this. I'm like, what the like, why? And no one knows what you've said at the previous person. Like everyone's focused on this one tiny system in your body, and they're completely disregarding most of the time the fact that, what's happening with your infertility could literally be a result of trauma. It could be a result of the fact that your HPA axis is completely dysregulated. So your body's in this unconscious stress response all the time. So of course you're not falling pregnant. Even PCOS, like the same kind of thing. So the easiest way to explain it, to really help understand how this flow-on effect happens, where basically we start with like an energy blockage or a micro or macro incident of trauma. So, like a micro incident of trauma, for example, would be that when you were 5 years old, you got a cupcake from the fridge and you took it to your mum to be like, here, mum, I brought you a cupcake. And she was on the phone and she was like, go away, I'm busy, and like slams the door on you. And she didn't mean it, obviously. She was just like, I don't know. But that was a micro trauma where it shocked your nervous system. You didn't know how to deal with it. She wasn't regulating you in that moment because she shut the door on you. She said no. And now you feel like, don't do anything that could possibly make somebody else happy if you're not 100% sure it's going to make them happy, because then you could like go into a fight or flight or a freeze response. So then maybe you become a people pleaser, something like that, right? Now, what can happen is as a child, that then filters into many possible other situations because you keep perceiving the same thing over and over again, where you want to protect yourself from experiencing that same pain again. You haven't released it out of your body. You don't understand what happened. You haven't processed it. So now you're a teenager, and when a boy says, let's have sex, you just say yes because you don't want to piss him off, for example. So it just kind of keeps filtering through. And at the same time, what's happening unconsciously, because you've just learned to live with it. And, as humans, we are adaptive beings. So that's why, the smell of your dogs become something that you just are unaware of because it's not relevant anymore because you're focused on other things. So in the background of all of this, your body is going off in this fight or flight response, or a freeze response. And the freeze response basically is like you're so stressed out, you drop into freeze, right? A lot of women drop into freeze because our bodies can't deal with the fight or flight because we just don't have the like hormonal system to deal with it. Men can kind of stay in fight or flight. So for a lot of women, they don't even know they're in a stress response, which is the issue as well. They can't even feel their bodies and what's happening because they're disassociated. So then what happens is your HPA axis gets completely dysregulated, right? The signals going to your ovaries and to your adrenals are completely off. Your adrenals are pumping out cortisol for way too much of a long period of time. And, if you have low cortisol, that's not a good thing. So basically low cortisol is when your adrenals have pumped out cortisol for a long period of time and they get to a point where it's like, okay, you're not listening. We can't keep pumping out cortisol. So we're going to now put you in a state of low cortisol. So you're basically permanently tired all the time. You wake up like you've been hit by a bus. You often go to sleep with that wired but tired feeling. That's like the pretty standard like symptom of having some kind of HPA axis dysfunction and like burnout or like adrenal not adrenal failure. Sorry, I joke about that with my fiance. I'm like, you have adrenal failure. It's not adrenal like burnout, basically adrenal dysfunction. And so then as a result, your adrenals are burnt out. Now your progesterone is low. Your estrogen is completely dysregulated. It could be super high, it could be super low. Your testosterone as a woman maybe is really high or maybe it's really, really low because like stress can do different things to everybody. As a result, you're not having a regular cycle. You're not ovulating correctly. Your egg health is down because this kind of stress is making you emotionally eat. You're not getting enough micronutrients. And now you have a case of quote unquote infertility or quote unquote PCOS or endometriosis when it's simply not that you are stuck with this thing forever, not that you can never have a baby. It's just a collection of symptoms that you can heal and they've just put a label on it. But unfortunately, that label does one of two things. Either it makes you think that you can never get pregnant, so you then hand your power over to a pill, or you become a victim to it, right? And you identify with that label and actually makes you now feel validated, which is fair enough to an extent, but you don't want to identify. And a lot of people do this nowadays where they identify with their anxiety. I have anxiety. You don't have anxiety. You feel anxious, right? You can feel the sensation of anxiety, but you don't have it. Like you have a dog, you don't have anxiety, right? And so people then really become kind of almost codependent on these labels as a way to feel seen, basically. And these people often have never really seen themselves. They've never really felt seen in their lives. And it's like, oh, finally someone's listening to my symptoms and they've given me the label of infertility. And so, whilst that can be beneficial, you want to make sure you're actually using it to your benefit and then going and healing the root cause, right? And being like, okay, I've been told that I have PCOS. I'm going to go and fix that. Now, when you go to, say, an OBGYN in America, for example, and it's different to like, if anyone's having a baby, different to a midwife. Like if you're having a baby and you want a really natural route, go to a midwife. But an OBGYN, like they're medically trained doctors. And unfortunately, that is predominantly about medication, unless they've gone on and done kind of like some sort of functional medicine, integrative medicine certificate or training. And so they've been taught that a pill is the solution, or that some kind of drug or some kind of intervention is the solution. Now, I'm not anti drugs, I'm not anti birth control or any of those things, but I'm anti uninformed decision. And in 99.9% of cases of women, and I was in this situation when I was put on the pill, we are not given all of our choices. We're given the drug choices, right? And we're told that this is the solution and this is what's going to give us the outcome that we want. And whilst maybe, yes, IVF, for example, gets you the baby that you want, you actually haven't still fixed the root cause. You've had the baby, but you still have the HPA axis dysfunction, right? Or, you've now gone down the route of the very expensive process of IVF and the emotionally expensive process of IVF. And maybe you're still struggling to get pregnant because it's not just a physical issue. It also can be an emotional issue where your body doesn't feel safe to hold a pregnancy. You've got all these mother wounds that you haven't dealt with where you don't feel like you can trust yourself to be a mom. Like the pregnancy one is super multi-layered, but it's always so fascinating when I get into it with clients because like everyone has kind of different things. But once we work on it and then they fall pregnant, they're like, this felt like the most obvious thing in the world. Like, of course I couldn't have a baby if this is what I was feeling internally. But we hide these things from ourselves. Like, we're wired to hide these things from ourselves as humans. So that's the kind of like flow on effect. So when you then do the somatic work, basically, the somatic work is then a very bottom up approach rather than like top down. So at the same time, you want to make sure that you're, like cutting out sugar, eating a low inflammatory diet, like doing all of those things that are of course going to boost your health and give you those positive benefits anyway. But the somatic work, so like in the example that I just gave with like the cupcake and the door and the kid and whatever, would be you really going into your body and healing that trigger and that somatic visceral response of fear when somebody says no to you, or that like stress response or complete numbness that comes over you when someone says no to you, and actually healing that at the root, and really going back into like your 5-year-old self and then integrating that, right? So then it's like, okay, how do you now integrate that into your life as an adult, where you then actually, that's where like the rewiring of your nervous system comes in, because you're changing those like maladaptive habitual functions that you're living out. And then the embodiment comes in of like, now you're embodying this version of yourself where you feel safe to say no, you feel safe to draw boundaries, you feel safe to, whatever it is. And as a result, now your body feels safe. Now you can hold a pregnancy, or now you don't have endometriosis, or whatever it is. Because we know from the science, and it's like unequivocally confirmed now, that like stress and people pleasing and shame causes inflammation, which of course then causes the disease. Because like think about it, when you're in that state of shame or anger or rage, you feel that in your body. You feel the stress, and that prolonged stress then causes the upregulation of inflammation, and then the fucking flow on effects happen.
There are a lot of people that are throwing out the word trauma.
Oh my God, don't get me into this. I
No, because I will, and you're gonna watch me because it is so frustrating to watch people educate and speak on and coach on things that they are not educated on or qualified to do. And so I would love to hear from you as someone who is a trauma healer who has loads and loads and loads of experience, what trauma actually means to you.
Okay, so the first thing that I want to say two things before I quickly get into that. Number one is to remember that you are going to heal at the pace that your body is capable of healing at and has the capacity to heal. So please, for the love of God, do not compare your healing like speed or journey to somebody else, but also have that discernment to be able to identify whether you're actually like pushing those edges or whether you're just staying in your comfort zone. Because if you're staying in your comfort zone, you aren't going to heal. That's the bottom line. Because a little bit of fear as you're getting into the stuff that you don't want to feel is required. So you have to kind of go to those edges a little bit. But you obviously, it's very essential that you are making sure that you, of course, go to those edges whilst feeling safe at the same time. And a really good healer, practitioner, guide is going to be able to hold those two energies for you at one time. So that's the first thing. Do not compare your speed to somebody else, because also we all have different amounts of trauma, levels of trauma. For some people, we're quite cognitive. Like I'm quite a cognitive person. So even though I do so much somatic work, for me, once I understand something, it's like everything shifts in my body and I'm like, oh, okay, cool, next. Whereas for other people, they really have to go in deep. And all of my clients are different in that respect as well. So that's the first thing. Second thing is if you are like on your note of like the integrity, if you are thinking about hiring somebody, please, for the love of fucking God, you need to have discernment. I actually did an Instagram story on this maybe last week. I don't know whether you saw it, Becca, but I had this like copying situation where this like
Oh, I
lady
saw
was,
it.
oh yeah, she's like, I was on top of that. It was, yeah, and it just proved basically, you can actually, I wrote it all up and I put it as a blog post. So I was going to say, if you go to my website and just search discerning, you will then be able to come up, because I've written out a list of like 5 things to be looking for to help you to identify somebody that okay, they are in embodiment and they are in integrity with what it is they're doing, because that's really, really essential. Otherwise, you're being fed information that they aren't embodying. So they don't know it to the depth that you need, and they won't be able to make the advice malleable to your situation. It'll just be very like copy and pasted and black and white. And like nothing is black and white in this. Everything is gray. So in regards to what trauma really means, and the most basic way to understand it is this. So trauma is not what somebody has written down as trauma. Trauma is not going to a war. Like that can be traumatic. Trauma is about how you have perceived a situation. So we could be in the exact same situation, Becca, and I might have felt so traumatized, so unsafe in my body, so dysregulated. And you were like, yeah, it was kind of scary, but like, I'm not like it, whatever. I'm not really fazed by it. So trauma is not about what happened. Trauma is about how you felt in that situation. And obviously, that feeling is something in regards to not feeling safe, whether it was that you felt unsafe, like you were going to die, or whether it was that you felt unsafe, like you were, your relationship was threatened. That's why I like to say there's kind of like that micro trauma and there's the macro trauma. So, macro trauma could obviously be getting into a really bad car accident where you thought that you were going to die, or your children were in the back and like that full stress response came over you. That could be a macro trauma. But a micro trauma could be, for example, that you have an abandonment wound from your past, and this micro trauma is getting activated all the time because you're in an unhealthy relationship with somebody and you're worried about them leaving, right? So we have to remember that we can continue to traumatize ourselves by doing the things that aren't good for our nervous systems and staying in situations that are unhealthy for us. But the fundamental thing to understand is that it is about the perception of something. That's why some men will come back from war and they're fine, and other men will come back from war and they are absolutely not fine. So as a child, that's also why your siblings, no matter how close or far away they are in age, they have a completely different experience of their childhood to you, and they have a completely different like habitual behaviors to you, because they were essentially raised by different parents, because they perceived everything in a different way to how you perceived it.
I really loved everything that you shared there. And I think that definition of trauma is going to be really great for people to anchor into and understand. It's not about what happened, it's about how you perceived it. And I think that's a really powerful shift. I also loved how you touched on the integrity piece, specifically in the coaching industry. There's something really off-putting for me when I find someone on Instagram and I automatically know who their mentor is and who they surround themselves with, because all of the language is the same, all of the conversations are the same, all of the typography is the same. And that tells me that they are not in touch with who they are authentically as an individual because they are just attaching themselves to someone else's personality or ideas.
Oh my God, that is the most cringe thing. Or if you another thing to notice as well is if someone's like pretty established in their business, because I want to obviously preface for anyone starting their business, you don't fucking know what you're doing. You don't know your branding and you're going to change a million and one times. And that's a good thing because you're finding yourself, right? But if you're established in your business and there is like a constant vibe change and inconsistency, like that to me is a red flag that there is something up. There is some kind of mimicking of their mentor or past mentors or thinking that if you change one thing because somebody else does it this way, then it's going to work for them. But it never works for them because it's completely inauthentic.
And I don't think people give credit where credit is due about how intuitive people are and how easy it is to sense and to feel when something is not quite right. And with you, Monica, you are just your own beast. You are in your own league. You have a lot of very unique things that you talk about, a lot of really unique phrases that you even use on your podcast. And when I listen to other podcasts and I automatically can tell that people are mimicking you, and even though you didn't invent the word chicken nuggets, like when people say chicken nuggets, when that's like something that you say a lot in your podcast, I just immediately turn the podcast off because I am just not available to listen to people who are not being authentic and are making a living or trying to make a living off just copying someone else.
I can't tell you how many situations we've had in the last year, and like people send them to me, like and I would hope for any business owner that you have cultivated a community where people are like, this is what Monica says, like you are so unique that somebody literally knows your terminology, so when somebody else says it, it's a clear copy. But yeah, like anyone that hears anything that I say, please send it to me because our lawyers just get on it straight away and like shut it down because like I mean, the whole podcast is copyrighted. And see, this is the thing, what's so funny that also shows that lack of just integrity, but also just like intellectual understanding of running a business is people don't realize that anything that like we say, for example, in this podcast, there's a particular phrase in the way that they say it in the law, but essentially any ideas that are spoken about that are original to us. So, for example, chicken nugget, like I can't trademark the word chicken nugget, right? But because it is something that is spoken about and a phrase and it's a original idea, it's actually copyrighted. So my podcast is copyrighted. So when somebody then says chicken nugget, technically my lawyers can actually go after them. Now, I'm not going to sue somebody if they take it down, but like it is wild to me how many people copy and they think that they won't get away with it. It's so like there is a difference between inspiration and taking phrases and not giving credit. You can give me credit, but it just, and I'm sorry, but it's not going to earn you any money because people know that it's not authentic. And it's just like, ugh, so gross.
I will say that you are one of the people, if not the person, that is the most copied in our industry from what I have observed. And it makes sense from the lens of you are one of the most successful people in this industry. And so people who aren't yet in tune with themselves feel like they have to be someone else in order to be successful. But regardless of the reason, I believe it was none other than the iconic Miss Kimberly Kardashian that said they can steal your recipe, but the sauce won't taste the same. And no one is ever going to be Monica Yates in the same way that no one is ever going to be me and no one is ever going to be you to the person that is listening to this. On that note, I would be absolutely remiss to not ask you this last question. You are hands down one of the most confident, unbothered, magnetic, unapologetic people I have ever met. And I would love to hear what you attribute to this.
So, yeah, the first thing that I will say so that people don't think that this is some like goal to live up to because we're all different is I have always been very confident. And I want to say that because I never want anyone to think that like they can just do a level of healing and then just be like me because I don't want you to be like me. I want you to be you. And when you are you, you are going to be your most magnetic. Don't think that you have to be like super loud and bold and whatever you say that I am in order to be successful or magnetic or that kind of thing. But my mum jokes that she made her girls too confident because she was raised very differently. And so as a result, she always wanted her girls to know that they were like, that they could be really confident and that kind of thing. So she always told us that, like, she basically fed us to believe that we were good enough, essentially. And so what's funny is that I never really had the belief, that kind of solid blanket belief of I'm not enough. I always had the belief of I'm too much, because I was like given so much confidence that it was then you're too loud, you're too much, you're too annoying, you're too abrasive, you're too this. For me, the biggest journey was actually being deeply self confident, because I was very outwardly self confident, but inwardly very insecure. So I would use this confidence that was actually kind of fake in order to feel secure and safe in social situations, but inside I'd be like freaking out. So for me, the biggest thing is actually almost like toning it down a little bit so that I could really deeply feel confident, and being able to, like we've talked about with discernment, being able to discern when my confidence and outwardness is wanted. So, like in this situation, for example, and then in other situations is actually not wanted. So it's like, shut the fuck up, Monica. And that was something that I didn't know how to really discern between. And that would hurt me in ways, because I would then like embarrass myself, or I would feel shit about myself, or I'd feel like I was too loud, or whatever it was when I was a teenager. So being able to have that like self-trust, and that it's almost, for me it was self-control, but in terms of the confidence around like speaking my truth, because that's never an easy thing for anybody, right? And even there's times like I actually try to not post my like feminism and like super men versus women stuff in my luteal phase, because we're always just more sensitive. And like if I posted an ovulation, I like don't give a fuck. But then if I posted in luteal, it just like stings a little bit more, which is never fun. But when people comment shit like, oh, she has Stockholm syndrome, or like, oh, this is actually an abusive relationship, or whatever it is. And yeah, like we can laugh about it, but I'm human, and like it does still sting a little bit. But I had this moment in London, and I think this is so important because we glamorize entrepreneurship a lot these days with social media. And we also just think that if you like something enough, then you'll be really good at it, which I don't believe is true at all. Um, and so people then go down this really hard journey, because it is hard, of trying to make a successful business, and they wonder why it doesn't succeed. And it's like, it's because you don't back it enough. So I had this moment because somebody commented something like really nasty, or was like blowing me up on social or something or other a few years ago. And I remembered I was standing at my back door in like my little townhouse thing. And this is like kind of graphic. But anyway, I said to myself, if someone put a gun to my head and said, would you still say this? Would you say yes? And I was like, yes. Like, I fully believe that I am here on this purpose, on this planet, to not only like raise a beautiful family and have babies, but also to share this message with the world. And like, gun to my head, I would still say the same shit. And that is so important, because for a lot of people, where the lack of confidence comes from is a lack of showing up. It's a lack of self belief. It's a lack of trusting their opinions or trusting what they want. It's that feeling of, if someone did put a gun to my head, would I waver in it? And if you're wavering in it, that then inhibits the direction, the showing up when it's hard, the making the decisions, like the consistent doing, that consistency, that building of your own integrity, that creates confidence. It's not just the healing of the wounds of you not feeling enough. That's like one part of it, of healing the wounds that made you feel like you can't be who you want to be. But then it's also that showing up and that consistency and that embodiment that then continues to make you feel confident. So, even just getting on podcasts like this, Becca, and like talking about these things, and people telling me that I'm helping them and getting my testimonials, of course those things also build confidence too, and as they should. Like, it would be weird if they didn't build my confidence. And like, so yeah, like I'm human, and as you grow as a human, you're going to build more confidence. But putting yourself in those situations where you are in alignment is going to then mean that's reflected back to you, and then of course that reflection back to you is also then going to build further confidence.
Yeah, I absolutely love that you said that. And I wholeheartedly agree, because I really, really believe that integrity and self trust is a really integral piece of building confidence. So, as the episode is coming to a close, I first just want to say thank you, because I feel so grateful that I had the opportunity to interview the the woman, the myth, the legend, the icon on my podcast today. And I've just loved our conversation so much. And I know that my audience is going to absolutely love you and your energy. And if they don't already follow you, let's share with them how they can get in touch with you, how they can follow along on socials. We will link everything below. But what's going on in your world right now, and where can people find you and work with you and listen to your incredible podcast?
Thank you. Website basically has everything, and our latest launches are on like the banner of the front cover website, so it's pretty easy to see because I'm always like launching different things. My Instagram is Monica Yates Health, podcast is Feminine as Fuck, and then people can just, but the asterisk is for the U. You have to put that in, otherwise it won't come up. And everyone can just find everything from there.
We will be sure to link all of that below. And again, thank you so much for coming on. It was an absolute blast to have you here today.
Thank you, Becca, for having me. Okay, friends. Well, I hope that you guys loved the episode with Becca. I really loved doing that. I just felt like we vibed. The energy was so good. So I hope that you guys have gotten a little pep in your step from it. If you want to take this just to another step of really getting like into the next step, of really getting into how you can have your man lead you and how you can step more into that receivership, then I would be joining my free masterclass, How to Have Him Lead You. We'll put the link below. You can watch it anytime and digest all of the super juicy information. It's a really jam-packed, I mean, all my masterclasses, like everyone always says, like, how the fuck is this shit for free? My masterclasses are so jam-packed, so juicy, such a turn on. And this one is definitely a turn on. The pictures, the colors, the vibe, the topic of conversation. It was really good. So anyway, we'll leave the link below, and do not forget to please, please, please subscribe to the podcast and also leave a written review down below if you haven't already. They mean the world to me. I read them. And if you send us a screenshot of your written review, we'll send you a little gift in return.